Well, here we are at another Corcoran webinar. We've had 6 this year, and we've had great topics and great panelists. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to be with you here today because this one's special. You know, we certainly have had webinars on all different parts of our business as large teams across the United States and Canada. Dave Ramsey from My Outdesk, Judy Lador on building our teams, Greer Allen with Boomtown talking about lead generation. And each separate webinar touches a different aspect of our business. Greer Allen with Boomtown, there are plenty of people across the country that use Boomtown as a lead generation system and a CRM, and that applies to a lot of people. What we have today is a group of panelists that represent a very, very small percentage of teams across the nation. So we're really honored today. My name is Chuck Lemire. I'm the director of coaching at Corcoran Associates, and I have the great pleasure in a minute of introducing Bob Corcoran when he walks back into his office.
Yes, Chuck,
Bob
I heard that.
Introduce each one of our panelists individually. So I'll allow Bob the opportunity to introduce each of these panelists because our purpose today is to take a look at what's possible in the real estate industry. Now, to frame that, we need to take a brief look at our industry. You know, the real estate industry, first and foremost, is an admirable one because all of us, no matter what our production level, help people with one of the most important decisions in their lives, where to call home. So it matters not truly the number of transactions or the volume of the money, even though we're going to talk about that in selling a business today. I know each one of these panelists take a look at each transaction as a special opportunity to make a difference in people's lives.
Beautiful.
And they also, in their partnership with each other as colleagues, in selling their businesses or any aspect of what they've done in their careers, look at their commitment to their communities as strongly as what they hope to share today, which is just insight that you can do this too. We have some great people that are registered for this particular webinar, teams across the nation in Canada that are doing 500, 750, 1,000 transactions that are just at the point of thinking to themselves, this is an asset that I need to nurture, grow, and potentially have an exit strategy. So in our industry, we have 1.4 million realtors. What we often don't recognize is that 700,000 of them, more than half, never sell a home in a given year. The other half, the majority of them, average about 10 transactions.
Right.
There is such a small percentage of our industry that truly is committed to developing systems, structure, process, all based on a foundation of culture. And a business is only strong in its value based on its culture first.
That's right, Chuck.
Each one of these panelists have different stories, and Bob will identify some of the pathways that they've followed, as well as the end result. But the one thing they have in common is they've all been close partnerships with Corcoran Associates and Bob Corcoran. So with that, I'll introduce our main speaker, who will interview each one of the panelists, my friend, colleague, and Mr. Bob Corcoran.
Thanks, Chuck. You know, this is actually one of my favorite webinars. I have 3 of my favorite people on here. Okay, all of them have coached with us for over a number of years, and every one of their stories are different. So when we're looking, you know, the biggest frustration for me is real estate is a business. Most real estate agents don't look at it as a business. I remember having conversations with all 3 of these people and saying, look, you need to look at your business that you're a chief executive officer. I remember having a conversation with Russell Rhodes. Russ, you are a top CEO in your market, okay, in the Dallas market, but you don't look at yourself that way. Lisa Burridge, same thing. Casper, Wyoming. David Foy. Corcoran, Minnesota. I use that because that's where you live, David, okay? And that's why he's coaching with me because he lives in Corcoran. Anyway, each of their stories are so unique. And what I want the listeners to understand, Chuck, is that there's no simple way to do this. It's all about what works best for you. So when I look at Lisa's story, I'm going to snip it. She'll fill in the blanks. Lisa sold a % of her company to partners No, she sold it for cash. David Foy brought in a partner who paid cash up front, paid over years. Russell Rhodes chose to sell his business outright to a company. So we have three different stories. So what I'd like to first start is, and we're going to talk about the mindset, because ladies and gentlemen listening, you got to look at yourself. Eventually, you're going to get out of real estate, either by your choice or through death. Okay? And you're going to look at the age of some of these people, okay? And we talk about death. Okay? Tomorrow is never guaranteed, Lisa. Tomorrow's never guaranteed. And that's why we always must think about the future and prepare yourselves as a chief executive officer of a major corporation in your market. So let me start out by introducing Lisa Burridge. Lisa Burridge is...
And before you do, with all due respect to Lisa, just as an aside for administration, Bob, I'll let you pick, like Lisa, to go first, so you can choose which. My biggest challenge as MC is I've got 4 very dynamic individuals. So I will keep us on track as much as we can, because we could speak for an hour on each different case.
Agreed.
What we'll do is we'll talk for about 15 or 20 minutes in each case. We'll allow our participants to ask questions in the question and answer column. So as you look at your Zoom meeting, just go to the bottom. If you have a question, set it in. Myself and Michael Russer, who's with us as well, will control the questions. All questions will be answered, if not within this webinar.
Very good, Chuck.
We'll answer them personally afterwards. And certainly those who are participating get a copy of the webinar. So all of the information here will be sent to all of you following this webinar.
Very good, Chuck.
Bob, I will just control our time a little bit and check in.
All right, great.
Let's start with Lisa.
All right, excellent. First off, Michael Russer hates, he hates public acknowledgement. Michael Russer's, folks, so you know who he is. I've known him for over 20 years. Lisa and I and Michael go way back. Michael is known as Mr. Internet in real estate. If you want to do something on the internet, and you're not working with Michael Russer, well, you're a loser. Anyway, I love Michael Russer like a brother. He is so influential in this industry. So Lisa, when we come to you and we think about your decision to want to sell shares of your company, what led up to that decision?
Well, there was actually a lot of thought through that decision, rather. And really, I had talked to both of my children. I think that everybody as a professional that has children, that you kind of hope that they'll take over your business or be interested in it. And at that time, neither one of my kids had any interest in the business. And I had a kind of a golden opportunity, I felt, to offer half, or basically 49% of our shares, to 2 fellows that were already working here. A really, really top producer and a fellow that I thought that ultimately would be a good operations fellow, that the 2 of them together would be great partners once I was ready to sell the remaining 51% of the company. So the process was really about the fact that I didn't know when I was going to be ready to get out of this business, but by only selling a portion of it, I didn't have any deadlines to have to get out. So I'm able to stay in this business and work as long as I wish. They still owe some of the amount that they paid for the business.
What percent of your business did you sell?
We sold 49% and I kept 51.
All right, and why did you choose that split, 51-49?
It was important that I remained the decision maker, and
very good.
I wasn't willing to let go of control of the company.
Yeah, and I look at all 3 of our panelists here. Hell, they're going to be negotiating deals from the grave. Okay, they're never getting out of the business. Okay, all right. So Lisa, and how long ago did you institute this?
It's been about 5 years now, 5 years ago. And so the 2 fellows are obviously still here, and they're an integral part of the company and part of our management team. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Out of curiosity, would you change anything about your decision?
Well, I don't know. Hindsight's always such a beautiful thing, right? And so I don't think I probably would. I mean, if I was going to fast forward, well, how would I have known that my kids are now interested, right? Since that time, my daughter's now here and my son's moving back here. And so, I mean, might it have been different if, yeah, I'm sure. But you know what? You can't really spend a lot of time doing that what if thing or.
No, you got to go with the bird in hand, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great decision. I don't regret it. I don't regret making the decision.
No, and the thing is, these people paid hard cash up front to buy into the business. Lisa didn't gift it. She sold it.
Mhm.
All right, remember that, folks, okay? And sometimes we may gift it, depending on the person. All right. If anything, Lisa, what would you do different? Or would you have done it sooner or what? Help the listeners understand the mental process you go through.
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, I think that you have to kind of take a look at where you're at in your market and where you're at in your profitability of your company. And so obviously the value of your business is based upon several items, not the least of which is your net numbers on what your financials look like. And so most people will base the sales price based upon, say, the last 3 or 5 years out of, the last 5 years, what's an average, what's your business been averaging. So I think that you've got to look at it from a timing perspective. And if you think you've had probably 5 or 3 of the best years you're going to have in a while, that's something to look at. If your market's if you think it's changing or it's changing, selling it while you're still up is really obviously the key.
All right, excellent. And since you started this partnership, have you started any other pillars of your real estate business?
Yes. So one of the values, if you want to stay in and get partners, is that they obviously can pick up a percentage of what you have to do as the rainmaker. And so being able to have time to look at different opportunities, we've been able to add additional pillars of income, a design center to our new construction business. We added insurance and mortgage, and we've added,
Wow.
industrial and commercial rentals and so on and so on. And there's just things that sometimes when you get so wrapped up in running your own team, you just don't have time to do a lot of things. And if you find the right partners, if you're not looking to step out 100% and you want to sell half of it, or I recommend 49%, but you have the
never go over 49. Remain control. That's my advice.
Sure. And then you have the opportunity to look at different different things that you might have not otherwise had time to consider.
Okay. And when you look at the other pillars, are your partners a piece of those additional pillars?
Yeah, they are. In fact, and the remaining 51%, if you think about it, if your company owns the remaining amount and you still have 51% to sell, but you increase the value of that, then it's obvious that you're just going to get more for the company than you might otherwise have. So yes, on the new pillars that we brought in, they're a percentage of it. Different percentages, all less than 50%. Yeah.
Excellent. And for those listening, this was Lisa's story, and she chose to share the income with those partners on the multiple pillars of business, whether it's mortgage, insurance, whatever Lisa's doing. The other side of it, she didn't need to do that.
Right.
She could have kept those pillars for herself.
Correct.
Okay, but being the true team player, she brought it all into the business, which adds value to her partners.
Yeah, exactly.
Bob, we had a question from one of our viewers that's probably appropriate at this time to Lisa. Most people can take a look at where you are now, Lisa, on the web and that type of thing. But this particular question was, Lisa, can you give us a brief snapshot of your career and where you started from and how you grew your business to add these pillars, and at what point during that process did you start to think about selling?
Great question, Chuck.
Yeah, so my story is kind of odd. I've actually sold my businesses 3 different times. And so after being in business about 18 years, I moved from one state completely to a different state. And then we decided we didn't really like it in that state. So we changed states. Then I decided I didn't really want to be in real estate anymore. So I sold that business and that I didn't stick with what I thought I really wanted to do. And I now have this business. So yes, I do change my mind. And the great thing about changing your mind is you can always change your mind again and do whatever you want to do. That's what's so cool about it. So even in this very market, I've sold another business and opened up this one currently. So, but I've been in business for, since 1983. And so I've been at this for quite a few years. And so selling 3 different times. What I did learn though, is that people need to realize that there's a lot more value in their businesses than they realize. There's a lot more potential. And so one of the super, super important items is to make sure that your database is clean and good and valuable, and you're marketing to your past customers and clients, and that you can actually prove to your buyer where your business is coming from and how it's structured and things like that. So my current sale, again, I only sold 49% and I'm still here, and I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon, which, by the way, interestingly enough, is okay with my partners. They'd rather have me around than not, which is kind of the way you'd want it. You know, if you're going to stick around, you hope that they would want you to stick around. Just saying.
All right. So
Yeah.
Lisa, what I want the listeners to understand is, Lisa, you sold your business 3 times.
Yes.
And I believe you sold it twice in your current market, correct?
Yes, correct. Mhm.
But in negotiations, we never have a non-compete.
Well, in the first sale that I had, and I think that's what's really important, that's a point I'd like to make to the viewers, is that there are no 2 deals that are the same. And so the very first sale I had, I actually did sign a no compete. And frankly, the reason I'm in the market I'm in today is because I couldn't go back to the market where I sold.
That was Evanston, correct?
Yeah, that was Evanston, Wyoming.
Right.
And if I didn't sign that no compete, I would have went back to that market because
Right.
I had a great business there, and that would have been easy. But instead,
Excellent.
I went to a different location and started all over. So.
Wow, with no name recognition, right?
In fact, it's really quite interesting because Bob Corcoran and I met in person the very first week that we moved here in this new location. So a friend of mine referred us to Bob and said, man, you really need to make it in your new market. Here's what I recommend you think about doing. And it was to hire Bob. And I look back now, 20 years ago, and it's just so you guys all get it. I mean, a lot of my success and the great growth I've had, I give to my friend Bob. It's really
well. Thanks, Lisa. But Lisa, I think what's important for the viewers to understand is that Lisa has sold her business 3 times. You got to be careful about a non-compete when you sell your business. All right. None of the other 2 panelists have to worry about that because Russell was outright. David has a partner. Okay, which is awesome. So I love what I'm hearing from you, Lisa.
Yeah, and no competes can be for a certain period of time. I think the one I signed, I'm not even recalling exactly, but I think it was around 5 years. And sometimes people don't have to sign one at all. The second sale I had, I didn't sign one. I'm still here in that same market. So it's interesting to think that the 3 of us have completely different stories, but I've heard of so many sales that have happened, and none of them have anything in common with each other. Really, and it can be a number of different ways.
All right, I agree, Lisa. So, ladies and gentlemen, Lisa is one way of selling your business by selling shares. Remember, I always recommend never give up more than 51%. Don't get into 50-50 deals. 51-49 should be the word. All right, Lisa?
Yeah.
Thanks for your story. Next,
Bob,
moving on to Russell Rhodes.
Bob, before we move to Russell, just one final thing with Lisa based on a question that came in from our panelists, and all of our viewers should know, we reminded each of the panelists we weren't going to talk deep numbers out of respect to everyone's individual situation. However, of course, Lisa, people would love to know, okay, at what point of number of transactions or volume, or especially as we do know, whether we're talking about the real estate vertical or other businesses, all business sales are based on a multiple on EBITDA. So can you, in your final comment, just give any numbers that you wish to share without going into numbers specifically that might give the viewers kind of an indication based on what their P&L looks like?
Great question. Super hard to answer. Probably,
Not easy to
not
answer.
easy to
Yeah.
answer. Yeah.
It is, and it goes
All
to
three of mine have been
just a
different.
comment from my experience, because as a young kid, I worked for DeWolf New England in Boston. He grew his company to 2,000 agents. It was a company, not a team. And in our industry, mostly companies are bought out by NRT and Compass and others. It's a different scenario than what we're talking about here, because we're talking about a team, right? That's based on the structure of buyer agents and other things. So,
Now,
we have to-
however, Chuck, hold on, Chuck. To answer the question quite briefly, okay, my recommendation, I'm looking for a 6 to 8 return on investment.
Yep.
We look at the last 3 years, we average net profit, and then the sale price is 6 to 8 times net.
Correct.
Okay, in
And
a
And mine
buyer's
wasn't
market,
quite
go
that
ahead,
high,
Lisa.
Bob. Mine was not quite that high. So,
I know.
you know, I'm not,
But it could have been, Lisa, that it wasn't quite that high, because like my experience with DeWolf, they had mortgage, title, insurance, and everything else. You chose to involve some of your partners to 49%, where other people's take a full buyout. So the 6.8 number on the EBITDA for Bob's example might be in total based on industry relevance, or even comparing it to other verticals. So
Sure.
I respect our panelists' question. That's what coaching is all about, because through all of this, the one thing that all three of you have in common is Bob was with you and the company was with you through the process. All are unique, but
Right.
the one similarity is we handled each one of your situations personally with you. So Bob, you want to go to Russell?
Excellent. Russell, tell us your story, please.
How far back, or I'm sorry, when you say tell me my story?
Start with birth, Russell.
Question.
Where were you born?
So I guess going back to, obviously the relevancy of this panel is about selling the business. So at the time I sold it, I'd been in business for 16 years, and my intent was not to sell. My intent was that at the time I was 52 years old, and I did not, and my thought was that I wanted to retire by the time I was 60. And what I didn't want to do was wait until 60 to ask the question, and then somebody tell me that you can't sell your business if you're on a team. And so then you got to go start your own brokerage, and you start your own brokerage, then you need at least 3 or 5 years to show that. And then you sell your business, then you got to stay on for 3 to 5 years as part of the buyout. And it would have stuck me at being at 70 when I could retire instead of being at 60. So what I did was I was starting to do my due diligence ahead of time to understand how do I need to structure it with the end goal at 60 to retire if I wanted, and then go backwards to then figure out what I was going to do accordingly. So that's how it all evolved. And so I started looking at, Berkshire, Hathaway, and some of these others to understand what does it mean to sell your business. And then what I started finding was selling a team within, I was with KW, selling a team within a company was something that was not very common. And so then so that's how it all kind of evolved. And then an opportunity came up where they were interested in buying my business, and they wanted someone to run the Texas region for them. And so it kind of evolved where I sold the business, and then also became the broker for the company who bought mine over their 400 independent agents, as well as the broker. So bottom line is that's how it all came about. It wasn't no intent to do it, but I can tell you this: if I was in your shoes, there's a couple things. If I can just kind of run Bob to give him a couple of things I think could be helpful to everyone. One is you need to get yourself out of production as much as possible if you're going to go sell your business, because the problem that most people are looking for is if you leave, then what asset do they really have? So the more that you are representing a smaller percentage of the overall production on your team, if you will, the more valuable your company is to people who are looking at buying it. So I was at the time or 2 years before I sold it, I was representing probably 25% of all the production for the team. And by the time I sold it, I was probably down to 15 to 18%. Well, that affected my money that I made. I got a big haircut because on my earnout, or on my what I sold it for, based on my own production. So you need to be setting your business up, starting to run where you're totally doing it, where you have people are doing the listing appointments and the buy sides and all the other stuff. And you are more of the, we use Bob's word, the CEO, and less of the day-to-day production. Because if you don't, then you're going to get a discount when you go to sell your business.
So Russell, can you give us an idea of what, at the time that you sold your business, give us a little idea of what the structure was of your business between all personnel, buyer agents, listing agents, ISAs? What did it look like?
Yeah, at the time we sold our business, we were doing 575 units roughly. We're doing about 6.2 million GCI. And we had probably 15 or 16 agents and probably 12 to 14 administrative. And we were netting probably somewhere in the neighborhood of around 1.4 to 1.7.
Okay. So when you were at that stage and you're thinking about selling, take us through kind of the mental process of, all right, if someone approaches you and is interested in buying your business as an entity, that's easy. That's kind of like, somebody calling us saying, hey, I want to list my house. We all have that, but that's usually not the majority of our transactions. We need to go out and find them. Give us a little idea of, so what was the process of finding the buyer? Where did you search, and how did you insulate your team from knowing that you were potentially interested in selling your business?
Because I was reaching out to the different players myself. But again, my intent was not to sell. My intent was to find out, what do I need to do to sell? And what does that need to look like 6, 7 years, 8 years from now? It was not to do it at that moment. That was my intent. And so I was just having conversations, and then it kind of evolved from there. And one of the questions I want to go back to respond to, I don't agree with what Bob said, and I'm just being totally candid, but I think, what I think is important, in my opinion, is for people to understand all different perspectives. Not everybody has the same opinion. And I just want to keep it real from my side anyway, right? I'm not a BS kind of guy. I'm a tell you straight, good, better, and different, right? And I don't think the number is 6 to 8 times net is what companies are getting these days, in what I have found, or I've heard.
What do you think it is?
But I think it's probably somewhere around 3, 5 is max.
Yeah.
But I think it also depends on what is your structure. So for example, I didn't have mortgage and title and all the other things. I was just a real estate company, right? I was selling. And I think it's also riskier for people that are buying a real estate company, especially a team, because what happens if Lisa leaves and it's the Lisa's Burridge's team or whatever, and she leaves, and all of a sudden all the competitors are saying Lisa's no longer part of it. How does that affect your marketplace, right? I think there's a lot of risk, honestly, for teams. Right. And so the more that you can, I believe, be positioning a way where it's the Russell Rhodes team. If I was going to be selling it, I'd probably be trying to work it to brand that was not my name specific then at that point somehow, if I was trying to make the strongest. And what I would be doing is I'd make it more where I was not involved in day-to-day production, where somebody could see that I could plug in there and I could come in and run Lisa's team in the marketplace, other than people in listing appointments that I'm going against or telling people Lisa's no longer part of the business. Does that make sense? That's the part, that's my view.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in agreement with you, Russell, based on my experience. And like all of our experiences, there's 2 sides to every coin, right? Because who comes to mind for me is Wes Madden, right? Who still has his team. He sold his business, left Alaska, but that team still carries his name, and they still carry the culture that was established there. And that's why in my entry, and of course, what is a great part, as all of you know, of Corcoran coaching, is the first important part of the strength of the foundation is your culture, because that establishes the relationships with your agents, all of the production and systems and the unity that exists within a team. And Wes is a very good example, not on our call today, but probably we should honor him in the fact that it's amazing that his team still carries on that business under his name. It's a credit to what he built in his culture and how that exists today.
It's interesting as you look at people, Keller Williams goes in this thing, talking about the 7th level and all that stuff, right? There's very few people that I've seen that have really pulled that off totally, right? Is a truth. And I believe in selling your business. You know, for me, well, first of all, what I think people need to be doing if you want to get the maximum dollar is I would suggest you do gravitate as much as you can to what I'm suggesting, i.e. less branding on you, yourself, more that you're not involved in day-to-day production, right? You got to have very strong financials, right? And be able to make sure you're not doing it off a napkin, right? You got to really have it together. So when you show somebody, they look at it and say, they know what they're for sure buying, right? Most real estate agents don't act like true businesses. You need to, if you want to have highest value, right? And that's where you need to be gravitating towards. And obviously I have a lot of respect for your coaching, is because one thing that Bob has always worked with me on, the truth is I'm a numbers guy, right? I come from a big 8 accounting firm, blah, blah, blah. I'm a numbers guy, right? But I can tell you that, you know, it was all the other things that I think Corcoran really helped us with, was the marketing and understanding the potential and the opportunity, and really how to grow a team and how to make that happen. But I think you need to gravitate less away from you being the main producer and you being more of a manager of it. So then the new person can come in and be a manager of it instead of that day-to-day production. I believe that's the key for your top dollar.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you, Russell. And we see that in a lot of our clients who are along the pathway, because a good coach should take you to where you want to go.
Right.
Not tell you this is the right pathway, you should sell it. But if you do want to sell it, a coach should be able to take you and position you for that process. Because you're right, as you know, within our culture at Corcoran, we put everything and establish on Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. But one of the authors that depicts what you're talking about is Michael Gerber in the E-Myth. Is whether or not you sell your business is not the point, but you should always be preparing your business for sale in the advent that you wish to exercise that pathway.
Yep.
Because what Lisa said is very appropriate. We can make, you know, plans and goals for this year, projections for 3 years, but we really don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. That's a wild ass guess. And who would have thought that your child, Lisa, would change their thought process and go, no, now I'm interested, now I'm ready.
Right.
So we never know.
You know? I would have back on Lisa would been is that, you know, it's hard about your kid getting involved or whatever. Part of it also that I would think she would need to evaluate is how much do I need the money from this sale to help me accomplish what I want in life? And if the answer is she's already got so much in savings and got whatever, she's fine. Or if her kids come in, they have residual to keep getting her. But one of the things that we have to look for, I believe, is we got to make sure as we look at our monthly burn rate that we have enough to get to the end and whatever that is. And that's part of my evaluation of what money I needed and when I need it and everything else is what is my burn rate? If God willing, I live to 90, do I have enough to get there? And if not, then I got to make plans accordingly. And if I did have the money, then I could afford to leave more to my kids and do other things. The more money you have to get to the end gives you more flexibility to then make other decisions, what you do with other people and other things. That's my
true. Russell, to close out your segment, you know, I'm curious. You show your age a little bit because when you say big 8 accounting firms, I went to Bentley University outside of Boston, and most of my peers went to big 8s, and that went to the big 6 and then 4 and then 2. Right?
Yeah.
So we're in the same, you know, church, different pew, as my Irish Catholic mother used to say. But
right.
Now that you've sold your business, here's the question. You're still very young and vibrant and you have spirit. Would you do it all over again?
You know, what's funny is I was talking to one of my closest friends about that earlier today. You know, one of the advantages for me when I did it was that the money I made, I only had to pay 20% on because of long-term capital gains, as long as you associate the value to goodwill, which is very important. Right. And so if you do that, that was almost like double the money for me, right? Because let's say if I'm roughly in a 40% tax bracket, but if I only tax 20% because of that, there's a huge advantage. Now, I don't know what Biden's going to do to all this crap for long, you know, all that stuff, right? But at that moment, so bottom line is that for me, and, you know, in our business, you know, we went from 575 to this last year, we sold 940 units, right? So it wasn't the business went down, it went up. And so what I have netted, and that was 970 traditional business. And then we also do the Zillow offers account, which really took us to almost 1,700 units. So, but bottom line is, would I do it again? Probably. But reason why I would have was mainly because I'm very risk adverse and I needed to take enough money off the table that I would probably, if I reduced my burn rate a little bit, I could probably make it to the end. And by me taking some off, it took less risk, right? It took some of the risk off of my family rather than something all falls apart or something happens and my wife would have nothing. I could get enough and set it aside where then my family, my wife would be okay to the end if something happened to me.
So based on that, I have a follow-up question. Looking back at it, knowing that we can milk our businesses and continue to receive the benefit from them in a lot of different ways, whether it be financially or personal gratification. Looking back, do you have any regrets in selling?
No, probably not. Probably not. I mean, I can tell you, I could go both ways on it, but I think God willing, I can redo it again if I want. But if I did it, I wouldn't do it to where I had it before. What I would is I'd do it on a smaller scale and probably make more money.
Yeah.
Because I think what happens is you start getting so focused on growing too much that your net, I netted more when I was selling 350 units than I did when I was selling 575 units.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think now I've just hopefully got willing smarter and focusing more and more on, did I really need this additional administrative? Did I really need all this other stuff? What did I need? And where could I really start zeroing it down? And the more I could make it more based on where I'm not dependent on internet lead generation, even though I never did a lot of it, I would even get more and more hyper focused on referral based, all that other kind of stuff, and creating a more profitable business. That's what I would.
Awesome comments. I have great respect for all three of you, but both Lisa's story and yours, Russell, because it's quite evident the consciousness that you have towards the business and being able to maximize any of the potential, not just for yourselves, but for everyone involved. And to be able to recognize that it's not about the fluff that a lot of people in our industry talk about, the numbers of transactions or that. It's about the true value, whether that be financial value in net and how that creates long-term profit, or whether it be about the great unity of a team and what you bring to people's lives and how you change people's lives within the industry. So thank you.
Chuck, if I end on one thing, if I could. Guys,
absolutely.
Being so focused on how many homes you sell, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is your net. And everybody, they talk about GCI and everybody's whatever. None of it matters. I know people that because I looked at buying a business that's doing 3.7 million GCI, and they were netting $300,000 a year, and their personal production of the 3-point-something million was 525. That was costing them $187,000 a year of their own production to support the team, because they were doing $1.2 million in Zillow, $1.1 million in Zillow leads at 50% and blah, blah, blah. It's crazy. Stop trying to get up there and trying to say, look how much I did in volume, and say, how much did I net? It's the only thing that matters. But nobody talks about it because most realtors lie, right? Or they don't know. I don't know what's worse. Focus on your net and money. This is a business, right? Stop trying to brag about how many units you sell and focus on how do you net the most amount of money, period. That's what I'd be suggesting.
Therein lies the difference between a competency of financial analysis in a P&L and, an income statement, and understanding the dynamics of that and how that is really, truly the most important thing to use a team leader, the team, and also your family. Good stuff. Thank you so much. Bob has, had some technical problems, as you can see. He's voicing by action because his headset died. David, if you could unmute yourselves, because we're going to shift over to you. So keep video on. And thanks very much for that. David is up in the land of 10,000 lakes. Just gorgeous country. I used to love coming in and out of Minnesota. David, I had the opportunity when I was very young in my career. I've been in our industry for 32 years, and I worked for a company that needed some leadership. I'd fly into the Twin Cities every Monday and fly home every Friday. And I covered that business. It was a franchise business that had hundreds of units throughout the state. I love your territory, gorgeous lakes, but most importantly, some of the best people in our country. So Real pleasure to speak to you. David, give us a little snapshot of what your career has been like, much like your colleagues, Lisa and Russell, and the transition of your team, kind of the pathway of where you started, where you got to, and especially where you started to think about selling your business.
So first of all, it's interesting to see Bob run around and not say a word, right? Look at him.
True.
So we may get a lot done really quick. So first of all, my background is radically different, and my business is radically different than both Russell and Lisa. But I am going to say what I said earlier before we started this. I am really flattered to be on a panel with the likes of you two. I really am. I have followed both of your careers for years through Bob and of course Howard Britton, et cetera. So to be on a panel, I'm done stroking you. I'm just telling you, I really have followed you folks. And Bob is always saying, well, Russell this and Lisa that and blah, blah, blah. For 15 years, I'm going to choke those two people. When I see them, I'm going to choke them because Bob keeps saying I should be like you two. So we're radically different. If Bob were at his desk, he could pull out something from his desk that is quite old. It's about 47 years old. It's a manuscript for a book. It's called Shoeshine Boy, The Life of a Foster Kid. I'm a welfare kid. So the radically different is I was born into poverty. Mentally, I still have issues sometimes with poverty mentality. So it hurts my business when I fall into poverty mentality, because when you have little and then you get something, you don't want to lose it. I think Russell kind of said that. I appreciated what you said, Russell, that you got something built up and you get the older, maybe whatever, you get a little adverse to risk. So in a nutshell, one of the catalysts is maybe the big college word I use today, that one of the catalysts to say, I need to do something radically different with my life than what I'm doing. This is my 45th year selling. I started in 1976 selling for my foster brother. I'd been working for industrial laundry firm right out of college. After I graduated college, I worked for them. I loved them. My brother recruited me to sell condos. I was a young, dumb kid selling to young, dumb kids. It was really a good thing. So we sold, I formed a team. We sold about 300 of them the first couple of years, and eventually about 700 in 4 years. So that was a big deal in the 70s, really, really a big deal. But I got to start. However, I learned nothing about management. And if Bob were in this picture now, and if he could talk, he would be swearing, saying, damn straight, he knows nothing yet. So in 45 years, it's been clear to me that I love selling. And Ameriprise, my investor group, says, hey, why don't you quit years ago? Why don't you just quit? Why don't you retire? Well, the three of us have one thing in common. We may be radically different. We love what we do. Russell, you love what you do. I know you do. Lisa, you're not out of it because you don't want to be. I met your daughter online, and now I know why she's like she is, because you love what you do. I love what I do. So I looked up, really, there's about 33 participants, maybe more, maybe less. I'm really not talking anymore to you, this group. It's talking to that group to say, you're on this call for a reason. I know at least a half dozen you personally, because you've called me and said, hey, I found out you did something. What did you do? How did you do that? How did you come up with an exit plan you actually pulled off? I'm sure Russell's had that phone call. I'm sure Lisa's had that call. I know Bob's getting more of those calls. So I'm speaking to that group. The poverty mentality I mentioned leads me to complete something I started. Bob's got it in his drawer, and that's that book. So I really want to get rolling on the book. I'm 68. I believe God wants me to get it done. I believe God wants me to promote it. And Bob's coming back, so I got to talk about God before I get hung up on. But I really believe, I absolutely believe that God's going to use that book and I need to get going. And the only way I could do it was get serious about selling my business. What's Bob got? Look at that. He's showing you the manuscript. If he could talk, he'd tell you he's had about 15 years. And Bob doesn't. Recently, I met with a publisher and the chief editor of a company called Bethany Publishing in the Twin Cities. So I'm moving forward with this, but I want to get to the business sale. That's really, Chuck, what you're asking.
Correct.
In lieu of Bob asking. So like some of you that are on this call, I found early on I could create way more business than I knew what to do with. I did, just like the rest of you rainmakers, we do that. Couldn't figure, what am I gonna do with all these leads? I tried a true partner in my business years ago. He was a slug. I ended up doing all the work and paying him half. I said, I don't like that idea. Eventually, I went to Howard Britton's seminar. Some of you know him, probably most of you. He's not with us anymore, but I went to Howard Britton's seminar and I took a workshop called How to Build a Team. Because unbeknown to everybody, I was ready to get out of the business. I was 20 years in the business. I have 6 children. I said, this is no way to live. I can't live like this. The last year I worked by myself with 1 assistant and 1 part-time assistant. I did 102 deals. That's a lot of work by yourself. Remember, no fax machines, no internet, nothing. And half the time, no cell phone. So my point is, I changed, and one of the people that was with me through that change, Bonnie Johnson, has been on my team 28 years. She's still on it. Dawn Jorgensen, almost 19 years with me. So good people made me successful, but it wasn't about good management. I found Bob. Russell, you stroke Bob, and so did Lisa. He can't say a word, so we can say things about him now, right? But the point is that the Bob story with me was really simple. I've heard about Lisa and Russell because Bob keeps saying, you should be doing this, you could be doing that. You two know what I'm talking about. He wants to kick you, you know where. I think, and I would say, I've been his basket case for 15 years. About 5 years ago, I started listening to him. About 5 years ago, I started taking things he was saying, comparing it to Howard Britton and what he was saying. And that is, I've got nothing to sell if I'm only selling myself. Nothing. Because when I go to sell my business, I don't have systems. I don't have this, don't have that, don't have this. What I do have is a loyal team that loves me. I love them. I have 45 years of clients. Many I'm working with their great-grandchildren and their grandchildren. And I had a business that's kind of surrounded around me. Bob changed that. And I took some of the Howard Britton things and said, I got to quit this. So rather than spend the rest of the time talking about what happened to me, I'll just say in a nutshell, Bob and I and my team created a business that had systems in place that were working, that had a client base, as Lisa said, that was scrubbed and continues to be scrubbed. We are going to pass a mile marker in my business in our community as a solo. It's a big deal. About August, if my next phone call is a call with Bob, my Zoom call, Bob and my team in 10 minutes, Bob, 10 minutes. So we're going to pass 6,000 closed transactions. And I started a team in 96, 97. Prior to that, I did about half those. But the point is, 6,000 is a big deal to us. Russell, you do that in 5 years. But to us, that's a long time. Bob can't talk. See him, look at him. So Chuck, take it away. Am I talking too much? I think.
No, perfect story. Let me ask a couple questions, David. Was it Bob's idea to convince you to sell your company, or was it yours?
It was my idea, and I went to Bob several different times, and all of a sudden I told him, Bob, I've got a buyer. And as you guys know, Bob wouldn't be where he is and help us if he wasn't a control freak. So Bob's spazzed out that he didn't interview the buyer. Okay. Later, after about 4 or 5 visits with the buyer, he complimented me and said, for 5 years, I've heard you say, God's going to bring you a buyer that fits your business. 40-some% of my buyer, of my clients are evangelicals. They're language-based, they're prayer-based, they're faith-based. I care who buys my business. Will they fit the clientele that I've worked with over the years? About 40-some% actually. And finally, Bob called me and said, okay, I can't believe this. You prayed about it for 5, 6 years. I've ignored lots of buyers. And suddenly here's a buyer that is a foot fitting a perfect shoe. And I think, and their children, which have joined since, even more so. I love working with my 2 partners and their 2 children that are buying in the business. I'm going to be walking away in 2, 3 years, not 100%. I'm kind of like you, Lisa, where are you? And probably Russell. Both of you are still involved, I understand, in your industry and the business. I don't want to walk away. Last thing is, Chuck, I did not sell them the whole business. I sold them the residential bread and butter brokerage. I did not sell acreage, large parcels, development business. I work with a lot of developers. I've got several significant long-term transactions, either closed or closing this year. So in one case, I get paid over 12 years and significant dollars. So my point is, I didn't sell that business. It's a different business. I will sell that and work with them once they're ready.
Yeah, it sounds like, and it's in my book, and it's in Bob's book because you've known Bob longer than I, but it's very we're very open to bring faith into our business because
yes,
regardless of which, higher power we all define or serve, very often divine intervention is an interesting part of our business. And it sounds like you had the right buyer brought to you.
That's correct.
If you were to pick, David, which part of your sale you love the most, the finance part or the fact that it meets your culture, which one to you is the better of the 2 values?
Absolutely culture, no questions asked. There's 12 on my team. We never say we are a Christian company. We're not. We are Christians in my company. We do things different. We are faith-based. By the way, I'm with Keller Williams Russell. And, Keller's motto is my motto, tweaked a bit because Bob never wants you to use somebody else's work. But basically, it's God, family, business. All of us would be liars if we didn't say sometimes family gets interfered by business.
Lisa Burridge knows that.
Wait, he can talk.
No, finally, Chuck, I figured it out. Here, I'm listening. David, I don't want to cut you off. However, I'm listening to what David Foy is saying, folks. And David is the epitome of normal. Russell Rhodes, Lisa Burridge, they're not too normal. And they both know how much I love them. Okay? They all have different motivations. Yes, I do have David Foy's book here on his Shoe Shine Boy. I held it up earlier in the call. What I'm most proud of these 3 people, folks, and those listening, Chuck, they got to understand there's many ways to skin a cat. You got to figure out what's best for you. Lisa Burridge did what's best for her. She may have some regrets. Russell Rhodes did what was best for him. He may have some regrets. Russell probably has less regrets than the other 2. Trust me. And Bob's, in my opinion, Russell. Okay, dude. All right. David Foy, totally different guy. This guy, and Lisa and David probably brought up from the same cloth.
So
Poverty
Bob,
mentality.
Bob, I'll ask you a question,
What?
because you've worked with all 3 of these professionals that are amazing individuals that have done something for themselves and their family. How do you help them differently? how can you switch from one person to the next and make sure
Everybody,
you
Chuck,
honor each person's situation?
yeah, Chuck, everybody's story is different. Okay. When Lisa chose to sell percentage of her company, when Russell chose to outright want to sell it, and Russell negotiated a great deal. We always pay attention, not compete. Like Lisa talked about earlier. David Foy is a different. All three are totally different, Chuck. And what the listeners have to understand is what works best for you. All three of these people, David, Lisa, and Russell, are three of the most esteemed people I cherish in my business life.
Thanks, Bob.
I am so proud to have them as friends. And I'll be there till they die. So, Chuck, what the listeners need to understand is what's best for you. All of them will tell you, I made the decision. I was happy with the decision at the time. At the end, I had some regrets.
Now, Russell said he didn't have any regrets, so we have to honor Russell in that respect. But I've got a question because we've got a couple questions in our Q&A.
That's not true. I don't have any regrets. It's not true.
Russell, I don't think Russell had any regrets.
The question is, would I do it again?
Yes.
It comes to everything, right? But I can tell you, I just want to say one thing is the most important thing. It's no different than you go on a listing appointment with the seller. The first question is, what are they trying to accomplish? And I think no matter what you're doing, the question is, what are you wanting to accomplish? And what you're trying to accomplish is in what you need to work with Bob and your significant other to help you structure that. And if it doesn't ultimately check enough boxes, then it's not the right answer. You do something else.
There you go. All right, so Chuck, I think an appropriate question to respect people's time. Lisa, listening to all the people, the hundreds of people that are listening today, and I'm thinking, do I need to put an exit strategy in place? What advice I'm going to ask all three of our panelists the same question. What advice would you give them, Lisa?
I think calling you is a good example of a good first start because there's so many pieces that you can help them put together.
Okay. Russell, what would you say to the people that are thinking of putting together an exit strategy?
In my period, it's like anything to do with your financial history or whatever's going on in your life. You always need to think about where you're wanting to go and start planning ahead of time if not, you just wander through aimlessly. In my view, as I always have to know a destination, God can change that any day. We all know. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan, then you wander around aimlessly, which is why when I was 52, that I started asking the question, not the thought to do it then, but when I get to 60. Right? What am I going to do? If that's my angle, whatever, what do I need to do between now and then rather than getting 60 and then asking the question? So I would definitely be asking for, and that's going to change and evolve as circumstances come up in your life, whether it's health, family,
great point, Russ,
or whatever. It could change. It doesn't have to be in stone. But I think every day, no different with your network, you're looking whatever, you need to say, here's my goal, and then keep reevaluating it, whether it's every 6 months, every year, on how has it changed now based on circumstances of life.
That's awesome advice, Russ. David, what would you say? God.
Okay, first, I'm unmuted. First of all, Russell, I want you to know I dropped out of accounting 3 times in college. I hate accounting. So I have learned early on, if you're really bad at something or detest it, make enough money to hire it done, right?
Boom.
So that you can do what you do best. Here's the best part. By making the decision to sell and by finally listening to Bob to get my business in a condition ready to sell, right? After losing my shorts from 07 to about 12, some years are good years. I broke even. Those are really good years, right? Some years not so good. But by getting the business right and getting it where it should be and getting the bottom line good where it should be, I was able to attract a mother, father that never been in the business and their children who are in the business. And it's been absolutely a fun ride. Here's the best part. They've taken me out of the day-to-day equation. I'm now getting to do what I've always liked to do. I lead gen. I work with sellers only. And you said 7th level. Somebody doesn't listen to my message here. 7th level, Russell. I'm familiar with the 7th level. I think I fear that because I like sticking at the 5th level where I'm
Right.
involved.
So David,
buyers.
hold on, David. So people, speaking of what David just said, 7th level. And those KW people understand 7th level. I look at Russell Rhodes, I look at Lisa Burridge. They're 7th level agents. Not many agents ever achieve that status. Okay, very minimal. Folks, what you must know, what's important to you. And every top producer must develop an exit strategy. So in a closing comment, Chuck, in order to respect time,
Yeah, absolutely.
Lisa,
Unfortunately,
hold
we're-
on, Chuck.
Go ahead.
Lisa,
Yes.
I'm going to ask Lisa, David, and Russell, same question. Your advice for people looking and thinking about an exit strategy. Lisa, what advice would you give them?
Get your database in place, make sure you have good profit and loss and that your company actually has a real net, because that's all that really matters.
Excellent. Russell?
Remove yourself from as much production as you can, have very strong financials.
Excellent. David?
I think I'm in mute. Okay, so mine is more simple than anybody. None of those things I could do by myself, and I hate doing them. So I'm gonna repeat this. Hire Bob Corcoran, at least for 3-4 years. This is a shameless commercial for everybody listening. But
Yeah,
at
thank
least
you.
3-4 years, get your business where it should be so you have something to market. And like I said, about 5 years ago, I started listening to Bob. He cracked the whip. It is very sound, solid business to sell. Without somebody helping me do that, I wasn't getting it done.
You know, and the one thing is most agents totally undervalue what their business is worth. I know Russell, David, Lisa, all of them will say, you know what, I didn't think my business was worth X, but I sold it for XX.
Yep.
Right, Russell? True statement, Russell?
Sure.
And Bob,
What
with
a-
that, Bob,
yeah, that was like
with
a-
that,
such a
you're definitely,
canned
because
answer.
if there's one thing I've learned is Bob Corcoran never asks a question that he doesn't already know the answer to.
Damn right. You know,
So
and
with that,
I
guys,
love
on
these three
on
people,
behalf-
Chuck. I love them to death.
Absolutely.
They're three of
So
my best
I
friends.
know that we could continue to talk, but in respect to our attendees, guys, I thank you for your time. And I'm really honored and respectful of all the efforts that you've made. Because after 33 years in this business, I've seen the lacking of one thing. The lacking of support from either companies or brokers or other people to help agents actually do what you've done. Why?
Mhm.
Because they have their own agenda. And so to have you're right, David, Howard Brinton, God rest his soul, was one that wanted to help people. So the advocacy for individuals and the collective financial strength of what they can build and what they can achieve and what they really is their true potential
Yeah.
is something that's very, very small in our business. So I appreciate your comments, David, on behalf of Corcoran Associates, because whether it be Bob or myself in our company, we have an advocacy to each one of you and all of the people that we serve. We simply want to be part of that small percentage that helps people achieve far more than they could ever imagine, because there's way too much control in our industry and way too many other agendas. So guys,
Thanks,
thank
Chuck.
you for your time and greatly
All right.
appreciate it.
And a
looking
closing,
forward to
hold
next
on,
time.
Chuck. Closing comment. I want to thank Lisa, Russell, David. Three of the dearest people in my heart. You mean a lot to me. And you guys have done extraordinarily well for you and your families.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right. All right. Love you all. Thanks, guys, for joining us. If we can help you, email us. We'll talk.